Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, all, and welcome to the 97th episode of TechNow. I'm already seeing emojis in the chat. Thank you so much for joining us here today. Today's webinar is designed to bring you, our phenomenal developer community, the latest and greatest information on the brand new release, which is Washington, D.C. So because today is the early access date and we can finally talk about it, let's dive straight into the content. Now, what is TechNow without a quick safe harbor notice? Given today is the early access date, not general availability, items shown here are always subject to change. Purchasing decisions based on the information here carries some known risks, so just be mindful of that. And with all that out of the way, let's introduce today's fantastic host. I will start with the elephant in the room, or perhaps maybe not in the room. Everyone put some hearts in the chat for Mr. Chuck Tomasi, who is currently enjoying this live stream, probably from the sandy beaches of Hawaii. My name is Laura McManaman. I was a developer in the ServiceNow community for 2 years prior to joining the company itself, where I worked as part of the Creator Workflows SC team for about 5 years prior to joining this. I'm really passionate about the automation capabilities of the ServiceNow platform, and I really liked creating content around kind of creating consumable ways to teach the basics of the platform. In my personal life, I have a passion for photography, be it aerial or underwater, and I spent a lot of time with my Bichon Frise Bo, who you might have seen on LinkedIn for a promotional video that we did. And I'll kick things off to my next host.
Hi, everyone. My name is Earl Duque. I'm also a senior developer advocate here at ServiceNow. I was a ServiceNow developer from 2016 to 2021 with 3 different customers, all in higher ed, before I joined ServiceNow. I've also had the privilege of being a developer MVP before I joined, where my favorite things to participate in were all the hackathons. On a personal note, I'm a proud father of 2 girls who are 1 and 3 years old. When I'm not making weird things in ServiceNow, I also enjoy anything gaming, so board games, fantasy football, and video games. And it's my pleasure to be here today, and now I will pass it over to Pranav.
Hi everyone, my name is Pranav Bhagat and I'm a senior developer advocate here at ServiceNow alongside Chuck, Earl and Lauren. I have close to around 8 years of ServiceNow experience. I started my journey as a developer, moved to consulting, and just prior to joining ServiceNow, I was working with a customer to help them with their implementation. I'm also a certified technical architect and an ex-ServiceNow MVP. In my free time, I love to walk, do some walks, and travel to some different places. And I'm going to pass it back to Lauren now.
Awesome. Thank you, Pranav. So we have a very large agenda for you, as you can see here today. But before we start, let me just kind of give you a couple of key tricks to analyzing the slides that you'll be seeing here today. In the upper right-hand corner of the slide, if you happen to see the US dollar signs, the USD dollar sign, that means that that represents a paid-for option of the ServiceNow platform. A lack of the icon indicates the feature is included with your platform pricing. House or store icon, as you might see in the upper right-hand corner, may indicate that this is available from the ServiceNow store. So it doesn't really indicate whether or not it requires additional licensing, but it changes how you would acquire that as a customer from the ServiceNow platform. Now, like I said, today is going to be a massive list. I wish we could dive into everything really deeply, but if you're curious to see what us advocates think are our top 5 developer features, let me quickly plug an upcoming episode of the Breakpoint podcast. Breakpoint talks about all the stuff to help you become a better ServiceNow developer. Chuck Tomasi and I host this, and it's dedicated to showcasing anything between platform functionality, how things are developed on ServiceNow, interviewing wonderful people in our community, and much, much more. So you can find Breakpoint anywhere podcasts can be accessed, be that Apple Podcasts, Google Play, or Spotify. A quick announcement to those in the audience that are App Engine customers. We are currently working to gather peer reviews of the ServiceNow App Engine. This is very, very important to us. Think of this as kind of like a Yelp review, but for software. If you participate in this review, which takes anywhere between 5 to 10 minutes, you get a $25 Amazon gift card. So not for nothing to participate. And this information is extremely vital to us continuously improving the overall platform in the direction that you find to be important as well. So scan that QR code, or you can go to devlink.sn/G2TechNow to give us that review, either now or later. Finally, let me address some of the most commonly asked questions right at the jump before we dive into today's content. This is an overview of App Engine, Automation Engine, and the multitude of platform features useful to developers and admins. We don't have time for demos, unfortunately, in today's presentation. So think of this as kind of a table of contents for everything that you will be learning about in the following weeks. Lucky for you, we have an entire, I think it's about 10 weeks worth of content planned to help you do that. So for the Washington version of ServiceNow, you can go to devlink.sn/Washington, or more appropriately, Washington, D.C., to find an entire content calendar of podcasts, live streams, videos, and blog posts that we have planned for you. And before anyone asks, we will not be discussing pricing and licensing, unfortunately. It's not really in our purview to do so. So if you have any questions regarding that, the best thing you can do is reach out to your account team. We will be taking Q&A breaks, as Chuck's little intro video indicated earlier. So you can either save your questions or post them in the Q&A window of On24, and we will address them accordingly. Now, all that's out of the way, enough housekeeping. Let's dive straight into today's content. So take it away, Earl.
Okay, so now here we're going to start off with a bunch of random cool stuff. We have a lot of things packed into this release, so these are some of the quick highlights that didn't quite fit into our main categories, but are still equally as fascinating. First off, if you are developing a custom GraphQL API, you'll find that our GraphQL Explorer that we're introducing in Washington is invaluable, especially all of you that are ready to learn more past REST APIs. This Explorer mirrors a popular third-party tool called Graphical. And you'll see that it's going to be a good way for in-platform API building and testing. It has full introspection. It has easy documentation. And if you are ready to jump into GraphQL stuff, don't miss out on learning more about it, about GraphQL APIs, in our CCL 1141 hands-on lab that is hosted by our very own Chuck Tomasi. Another big update, and this is going to excite a lot of us, at least for me, I know that I'm very excited for this. Our scripts background editor is finally becoming a Monaco editor. So it'll improve your server-side scripting experience with things like a toolbar, line numbers, color coding for easier reading and debugging. I'm tired of looking at a plain black and white text box to do some of my background scripts, but now we finally have a full JavaScript editor for background scripts. The next thing, the automated testing framework now supports configurable workspaces. So when using steps like open in a new form, you can choose from various workspaces. It's a seamless transition across like your different UI actions and values. And this feature is currently available for list and form components. And we have plans more for future releases like in Xanadu release. Safe Harbor, of course. If Chuck was here, he would say safe harbor, safe harbor, safe harbor. But yeah, so we're going to keep enhancing this ATF support in workspaces. Remote tables are invaluable if you have integrations with external databases. Our remote table feature now allows for retrieving over 1,000 records. Before Washington, D.C., it was up to 1,000 records, but with this enhancement, which is an opt-in feature for Washington, D.C. release, so make sure you hit that checkbox. It's a great way to, it's great to have because you'll have a basically broader access to remote data, and it's going to be much easier to manage that data. Alongside remote table updates, you can now trigger it via Flow Designer, not just scripts. Before Washington, D.C., you would have to trigger remote tables via script, but this integration simplifies creating and maintaining web service integrations, and it just makes it a lot more easier to do remote tables, managing them, and having better utility with them. We love putting things into Flow Designer, so it's good that we keep adding these things to Flow. We love parity features, right? So if your environment has multiple encryption contexts for your users, they can now select them when attaching files instead of just the default encryption context. A little tiny thing. It took us 7 slides before we mentioned generative AI, but analysis features powered by generative AI are coming to more product suites. So things like task summarization is going to be available in customer service management and a lot more other product suites. And we're always doing more, and more are always on the way. Here's another exciting one to me, because I know I would have implemented this when I was a developer at my previous jobs. Performance testing is coming to the automated testing framework. So you'll be able to find self-inflicted performance issues in your ServiceNow customizations. You can profile performance with ATF tests. You can use existing tests that you already have created in your environment, or you can create more targeted tests just to target that performance, those performance tests directly. Our next little random improvement comes to us in the form of permissions handling for developers, the delegated admin permission. What we found was that developers were commonly just mass assigning all 25 permissions to their delegated developers, and compounded over many apps in your instance, this was creating dozens, if not hundreds of roles for multiple people. So to simplify everything, the delegated development module, the delegated admin permission now encompasses all 25 sets of permissions that you can just toggle on and off with a simple button. In the Washington upgrade, in this release, node log files now include an attribution field. So this feature really helps with providing clarity on the origin of each log line. It's going to improve your debugging and system monitoring capabilities. It will be a lot easier to tie together all sources of code that generated each log statement. I know each developer out there has sat there looking at logs, just wondering where everything came from. And so now it's going to be a lot easier to find all those sources. The activity log in the application manager that we recently introduced now features enhanced filtering options based on progress state, such as recently added, scheduled, in progress, completed, and failed. Alongside inside application manager, we have a pre-install modal. It's being completely redesigned for better visibility and understanding of dependencies. So it now groups dependencies into categories like will be installed, already installed, and needs to be licensed. We're contributing, or we're continuing the Next Experience release tradition and providing more and more user interfaces for legacy tools. So this time around, cloning gets the star treatment, and we are introducing the Clone Admin console. You'll see enablement, overviews of scheduled clones, the clone statuses, exclusions, preservers, cleanup scripts. It's all going to be in one user interface now. But if you are old school and you like to do the existing clone process in the core platform, that's still there too. Just like all of our new Next Experience user interfaces, this is if you want a new clean interface with all of it in one place, but you can still use your tried and true methods too. It's both. And finally, for random cool stuff, one of my favorite things that's coming, the ServiceNow SDK is being updated with even bigger things coming that we will talk about more in the coming months. But making it, this SDK, it's going to make it even easier for developers to have a more traditional workflow if you choose. So you'll be able to use VS Code for creating and modifying scoped applications with custom and third-party modules. So this is really exciting for me. And before I pass it back over to Lauren, I'm going to go install Lodash on my ServiceNow SDK on all of my custom apps. So go for it, Lauren.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Cheryl. Please give some claps in chat for his kickoff of this. That's a really exciting way to start off TechNow. So, all right, heading into Flow Designer, Process Automation Designer, and something new. For those of you that are new to this, Flow Designer is the graphical UI that allows you to build triggered or scheduled workflows to automate processes on the ServiceNow platform that also could include third-party integrations. Process Automation Designer, or PAD as I'll be calling it from here on out, is used to create playbooks on top of Flow Designer that allow business owners and things like that more control over the automations occurring within their domain. Now, to kick off this lift, we have a very, very highly requested feature and something, man, I have needed this for years. Starting in the Washington version of ServiceNow, you can both undo and redo actions in Flow Designer. Hooray. A quick operational note to be mindful of, though, if you close out of the tab for Flow Designer, the history of the changes is gone. So it's kind of stored within the session in which you are currently developing. So be sure to be mindful of that while you are building. Next up, another highly requested feature. Ever since Flow Designer was launched, on one of the most common actions built was creating a way to fire a system event. System events are really, really commonly used for the people that use them. They drive a lot of things on the platform, such as triggering certain types of email notifications and running script actions and other things as well. Now you can choose to fire an event action under the ServiceNow core spoke and select even which event is popping up. So you don't have to physically type in the name anymore. You can actually just use a dropdown like everything else in Flow Designer. Now that we've got a new action, what about a new trigger? There is more to come on this feature later, so this is a little bit of a tease for what is to come. But flows can now be driven by what are called proactive insights from your data's analytics. What does that mean? For now, this means that flows can automatically kick off based off of data pertaining to the reports that you care about the most. If a goal is missed by a certain margin or a threshold is breached in a certain time frame, those are a couple of examples of what can now automatically trigger your flows. You don't have to be sitting there watching your dashboards every minute of the day to kick something off. So that, by far, this is probably the thing I'm most excited about. I would toss a heart in that if I had the opportunity to. Flow diagramming in Washington, D.C. has had a few very nice little changes as well, a lot of which are very highly visual. So I'll kind of give you a little walkthrough here today. First, it adds support for try-catch blocks to enable you to catch potential errors and continue to keep executing when they are not apparent. So I want to draw your attention to the right side of the catch block on the bottom. Notice that the true is on the side and not on the bottom, like if this were a standard if statement. That's because normal successful flows go straight through an action, whereas the side is used for fail conditions if and when they are to occur. Also note that the connections inside the try-catch blocks are dotted. That is to indicate that this is a path the flow might go through, but it's not guaranteed, right? A failure anywhere in the line can skip over actions to get to that catch block. And you can see this when you hover over the connecting line. A little pop-up will occur when it goes out on successful or on an Flow diagramming now also includes annotations, something developers love, annotating their code. You can edit annotations either from the menu icon on the far right side of the panel or the action properties as well. Additionally, you can choose to display or hide said annotations in the view from the view menu in the lower left-hand corner. The details option on the same menu follows you through the display or hide the details on the actions, like on this if statement. Notice that the condition on the if statement is in natural language, like everything else in Flow Designer. For example, priority is 1 dash critical, rather than just priority equals 1. It's actually writing out and communicating with you what this actually means. And one more thing for Flow Designer, you can toggle the error handler on and off in the lower right-hand corner of the screen, as well as where you edit the properties. Now, just note, this is a slight, a little bit of an outlier, but just a note there are some changes occurring to the system property for Flow reporting. Normally, this is not something that you will be messing with unless you're doing some very serious debugging, usually alongside ServiceNow support. So we won't really go into the details. I highly encourage you to check out the docs for this, but we want to make you aware that these changes have occurred in case you need them. Be sure to check out those docs. They will be listed in the resource panel as well. Alternatively, you can use the flow setting to adjust this new type of reporting to specific flows. So just know that we've changed ServiceNow reporting, and on top of that, you can make it specific to certain flows, not all of them. Again, be sure to only use this when absolutely necessary, because turning them on can lead to some very large execution logs, which are helpful when debugging, but clog up everything else when you are not. Now, enough on Flow Designer. As much as I love it, let's pivot to PAD. As a reminder, Process Automation Designer. Previously, you were required to create activity definitions in advance if you wanted to consume things like flows, subflows, or actions. Now, you can consume raw assets such as flows, subflows, or actions without needing to create activity definitions. So essentially, we are cutting out the middleman and making the process easier for you. Another helpful improvement made to PAD is that it removes the need for activity makers to type in the fields manually when configuring an activity. I have sticky fingers all the time. I misspell everything, as my teammates would attribute to. So being able to pick the fields necessary from a drop-down list instead of having to type them all out is a really, really important improvement that removes a lot of human error. And finally, developers, we have the ability to show dynamic inputs with sets of dynamic fields on any activity whose subflow has dynamic input as their field. Dynamic inputs allow for use cases like showing a certain set of fields based off of a REST API response, or returning input variables based off a specific catalog item or decision table inputs as well. It adds this entire new range of flexibility to PAD that didn't exist before. And so it's elevating the capabilities of the business owners that are running these various playbooks. Now, that's a lot of changes made to both Flow Designer and PAD. Keep your eyes open on the March 4th date. So there will be a blog post coming out that details pretty much everything that I've covered today in a lot more depth. Now, I did tease something a little bit new with regards to automation on ServiceNow. With Washington comes the launch of Workflow Studio. So give some excitement in the chat for that. Hot on the heels of the newly redesigned Flow Designer homepage, Workflow Studio essentially is springboarding off of that to bring all automation together. Flows, subflows, flow actions, processes, decision tables, all from one builder. All these things have been created by a litany of teams within ServiceNow over many years of time. And finally, we have consolidated them as a user to access them from one location. This is a product directly of your feedback. So again, a reminder to fill out the survey I mentioned earlier, because then we can build cool stuff that is in direct response to what you want the most. If you'd like to see us advocates play around with this, you can join us live for a live coding happy hour on March 1st as well. And that brings me to the end of the Flow Designer section and our first Q&A break. So gentlemen, have we found some interesting questions that we'd like to address first?
Yes, and I actually asked this question during our rehearsal, and Lauren was able to answer, so I'll ask it again so Lauren can answer. For Flow Designer undo redo, what is the history limit of being able to undo and redo in Flow Designer?
The history limit is located to the specific session. So basically, when you open up a flow in App Engine Studio or from within Flow Designer, I guess now Workflow Studio, the undo and redo are limited to that current session. There was no indication of a limit for the amount in which you could undo and redo. I will double check the docs, but there was no number indicated in them that I saw. So I think it's just based off the current session, but I will double check.
Thank you, Lauren. We had another question. Does background scripts support running the script from all available scopes now? And I don't believe we changed that behavior at all. So it's still global and custom apps that you'll be able to run those, your background scripts directly into. If you see other questions that you think it would be great to answer on air, please shout it out, that both of us or both of you.
I see one from Kartik. He says, explain more about Workflow Studio. So essentially, in Vancouver, there was a brand new homepage designed for Flow Designer, added more reporting in. It elevated the layout to not just like basically a list of flows. And so essentially what Workflow Studio is it's kind of springboarding off what people liked about that for just flows and bring in all the different types of automation into one place. So traditionally on ServiceNow, things are built as the need arises. So sometimes initially in their release, they are not in the location on the platform that eventually they are destined to find a home in. They're built by different teams, they're built in different geolocations. And so every once in a while, you'll see a consolidation effort. That is what Workflow Studio is. It's not only a consolidation effort, but it's also adding all those benefits that the new homepage of Flow Designer had to other aspects of automation as well.
Excellent. We had a question, is the GraphQL workshop that I mentioned the same one that Chuck did at CreatorCon at Knowledge 23? And if so, that was worth doing it if you're a GraphQL newbie like me. And yes, Ed, that is the same lab that you can check out online, ready for you all to dive into GraphQL for the first time. Again, GraphQL, if you are a ServiceNow developer used to REST APIs, more and more integrations out there are requiring GraphQL. So it's a good time to jump in. But we are getting a good amount of questions about GraphQL.
With that being said, I will kick things over to Pranav for the automation engine section.
All right. Thanks, Lauren. I love the Workflow Studio. It's amazing. I played with it. Talking about amazing stuff, let's talk about Automation Engine. Automation Engine is a combination of Integration Hub, RP Hub, Stream Connect, Document Intelligence, Automation Center, and just prior to Washington, we have added process mining to it. Let's talk about Integration Hub. We launched Spoke Generator, which was loved by many when during the Vancouver release. Show some love if you love the Spoke Generator by reacting to it. So in the Washington release, what we have done is like the base URL will get automatically populated when you are setting up the connection. Secondly, you will be able to search for the operations once the Open API specification is loaded. And finally, like as soon as you are creating a spoke and you enter a name, based on the name, there will be recommendations that will be provided to you from the ServiceNow store so that you don't create a duplicate one. So that's from the Integration Hub department. And coming to now my favorite product. If you have guessed it, RPA, give me a thumbs up in the reaction. So let's talk about embedded task automation. Embedded task automation is for the RP developers who works with attended robots. Current state, when you are creating an attended robot, you have to create a middle form, as you can see on the screen, right, which is used to pass data to a third-party business process. What happens is like this hinders the utilization of existing ServiceNow forms. So what we have done is like now you will be able to directly leverage the ServiceNow forms without needing to create any middle form for it. This is amazing and it will save a lot of time for our RPA developers. Let's talk about like Help Center. As the name suggests, it provides you with the real-time assistance to developer. As you navigate through RP Hub, the Help Center is right there for you, providing you with all the information and insight, and so that you can utilize the product to its fullest. And I remember when I started learning RPA, like back in San Diego or something, like there was no Help Center. And if it was there, I would have learned much faster. And thanks ServiceNow for getting this thing up, and also our product team. Moving on to like security is always our top priority. So now you will be able to encrypt sensitive content in the process queue. Lastly, let's talk about new components. We have added 3 new components as part of the W release. First thing is the graceful stop component. It's like we already have a stop process button in our process queue. So what happens is like when you click on that particular button, the automation stops then and there. But with the graceful stop component, if you use it logically in your automation, you can like stop or exit the automation more smoothly. Now let's talk about automation log component. As the name suggests, it is used to add logging mechanism to your automation. And lastly, simulate mouse event. Again, as the name suggests, simulate. Now you'll be able to simulate different types of mouse action like click, right click, double click, etc. Whatever you want to do with it. And now let's move on to our latest addition to automation engine, process mining. Process mining helps analysts and process owners to quickly analyze and optimize their business process. We are bringing a guided new experience for our new user. I'll be honest with you, I recently started learning process mining, and this guided experience is a blessing for people like me who just started. And coming to different, like, let's talk about automated findings. So we have added additional automated finding, as you can see on the screen. If you are not aware what exactly are automated findings, you can define automated finding for a particular process to find process inefficiencies. Moving on to now with the Washington release, we provide you with the end-to-end visibility into your business process. That is not only limited to ServiceNow, but also other enterprise application to identify process improvement opportunity. I think this is a game changer in terms of process mining. Good job, product team, on that. Moving on to last feature from process mining, like when you are developing, if you have already worked with process mining, you know the process maps can get very complicated, right? So now what you can do is like you can combine multiple activity field into a single compound field, making the visualization process much easier to interpret. And moving on to one of the coolest feature from the automation engine department, and it's a draw mode in document intelligence. So when you are viewing a particular process document in the document intelligence where there are no recommendation or incorrect recommendation, you can use the draw tool to select a particular area and extract the fields from that image. And that's all I have from the automation engine department. I'm going to pass it back to Earl to talk about next experience and UI builder.
All right, so next experience and UI builder, there's a lot of stuff in here, so let's dive right in. First is near and dear to my heart. It's my goal to be able to do all my work with just a keyboard on my lap so that I can work reclined in my chair with my feet propped up on my desk, and more keyboard shortcuts help me reach that goal. So in this release, we introduced keyboard shortcuts and contextual keyboard shortcuts and improved the layout for higher zoom levels and a what's new section in the help menu. All of these things are aimed at just enhancing your experience and accessibility. The next one will be exciting for anyone who's familiar with working within UI Builder. UI Builder now boasts a much more user-friendly interface for data binding. So think of things like drag and drop functionality, an organized list of formulas and description. It's going to simplify the process of linking UI components to data sources. And most importantly, this will make it a lot better for discoverability. So with data binding, because we have an interface to help answer those things like, what do I have access to? Or what can I even put in here? It's going to make building these data binding text a lot easier throughout UI Builder. So this is really great. And if you ever used UI Builder, you know what I'm talking about. This is an exciting thing. Additionally, the tiny icons in the bottom left data resources have been replaced with an easier to navigate menu structure to make it much more easier to discover and reduce clicks. A few saved clicks hundreds of times means so much more time served. So time saved. So I'm so glad that we're moving those to its own panel. Here's another nice quality of life update. No more trying to remember the scope of your data resources. You can easily browse and search now. In fact, the most common ones are bubbled up to the top as you use them. We introduced column layouts in Vancouver, but in this release, column layouts have been further developed to allow easy reordering, adding, deleting, renaming. We've also improved the controls for adjusting size and style. It's going to just be a lot better for page structuring within UI Builder. If you're like me or any of my colleagues who end up having a million tabs open, you're going to like this. Tabs within UI Builder now offer much more enhanced functionality. So you'll be able to add, rename, and set default tabs much easier, as well as the option to assign friendly ID names to all of your tabs. The default images for Now icon and Now image can be changed now. The Now icon has a browser now, and both Now icon and Now image can be custom images if you so choose. So it makes branding your pages a lot easier and more friendly to do. And finally, for UI Builder, the Form Builder can be launched from App Engine Studio, UI Builder, or the Workspace runtime to make it a lot easier to modify form layouts and field properties. It's going to make it much easier to access your tools easily from all your other tools, basically. And that's always a better experience. And there's more things coming through for all of these different things, but we wanted to highlight some of these fun stuff for you. And that's all for our next experience in UI Builder. I always love how much updates they pack into each release. And I'm excited to see what they come up with for the next release too. Next, I'll pass it back to Pranav.
All right. Thanks, Earl. Every time you or Chuck or Lauren talks about UI Builder, it makes me excited and I get tempted to start learning it. Anyway, let's move to platform security. So first up is like now you'll be able to assign time-limited temporary roles to specific users and group. I still remember the time when I was working with a customer and I built this functionality like completely from scratch. So thanks to our product team. Next up is Access Analyzer. Access Analyzer was something that we launched in Vancouver release. It was loved by many. Like now you will be able to compare user details, roles, and groups of two users, as well as you'll be able to compare their user access. So Moving on to inbound API security enhancements. Currently, like we only support basic authentication for our inbound API calls. From the Washington release, we also support API keys and also will be able to support client credential grant type for our inbound integration. This is something like came up from your feedback, and finally it's here in the release. So thank you everyone who gave the feedback. Moving on to data privacy enhancement. Data privacy is part of our ServiceNow Vault suite, and now you will be able to you will be able to enable data discovery and anonymization for API calls. Secondly, you'll be able to identify sensitive data with keyword. Moving on to security center enhancement. So we have added critical update manager as part of the security enhancement store app. As you can see in the image, we have added a timeline. With this timeline, admins now have the visibility into existing and upcoming critical updates in a single place, as well as a step-by-step guidance on how they can adopt these security updates. This is something like I remember my time as when I was working as an admin, and this thing could have been a game changer when I was working during all these critical updates, managing those things. Moving on to session management. So we have added a session validation policy as part of the adaptive authentication policy framework. Session validation policy provides an additional layer of protection against session or cookie hijacking by capturing the IP address of the user during session creation. So when we receive a request, it checks the IP address. If the IP address differs from the session creation, it won't allow the user in. And I think that's all I have. And we are again back to a Q&A break. So any questions we have in the chat?
A lot of people are asking, when will this be available on our PDIs? And the answer is sometime later today. Traditionally, we do. That's why we do TechNow on this specific date, is because you are all we don't want to entice you and then say, haha, you have to wait now. No, it's usually they become available later today. Please be patient. Usually there's a huge influx of people requesting PDIs on this date, along with trying to upgrade to the newest version. So if you don't see it happen right away, also I forgot to say, the best thing to do is always upgrade your current PDI if you instead of releasing and asking for a new one, because you might hit a queue. Other questions?
I keep seeing a lot of questions about Workflow Studio. One of the common ones I keep seeing pop up is, will it support legacy workflows? To be honest, I don't know. I will have to double check. Obviously, for the newcomers here, legacy workflows was ServiceNow's first form of automation on the platform. It was the predecessor to Flow Designer, but has since been moved to a legacy system. So basically, we are no longer improving it. I'll jump the gun a bit, and I will assume that the Workflow Studio does not currently support workflows, because as a company, we are no longer supporting them. But I'll be sure to double check.
And Lauren, just to add on, like you're right. You don't have to check like workflow, like normal regular workflows won't be there in the Workflow Studio that we have. We'll only have the flows, integration components, spokes, and the process automation designer. We won't be having workflows in that.
Also, just to clarify, it still works, and it's in the system and supported. There's no future support of enhancements or anything to it. We're not taking away Workflow Editor right now. There's also people asking, when's Washington D.C. available for wide release? Until they publicize the actual general availability date, then we can't really say until when that is. But yeah, a lot of questions about Workflow Studio, a lot of things about Flow Designer. People are like, why aren't you talking about more Gen AI stuff? Gen AI stuff is everywhere. It's just part of everything. We would have a much longer webinar if we talked about all the different things happening around generative AI just for that.
I will also say that Vancouver was our first attempt at Gen AI at all. And so a lot of the improvements were made to the platform to handle Gen AI. I would say a lot of the newer ones for Washington, D.C. are app specific. So they will, I would highly encourage you, if you are perhaps an ITSM customer or a CSM customer, to look, because I believe that's where most of the generative AI, basically they're trying to trickle it down. A lot of it started in platform and it's trying to trickle down to other workflow clouds.
There's so many questions. I'm trying to scroll through all of them.
We're a man down, so I apologize if we don't get to as many questions as usual. But just know that all questions will be responded to in print, if they are missed in the context of this webinar. For now, let's dive straight into our next one. Is that feeling okay, guys? Awesome. Well, you're stuck with me for platform analytics. So in case you're wondering about the name, this is a new name for this entire list. Platform analytics is a modernization of both performance analytics plus the consolidation with the old standard reporting builder with support for the next experience. So it's basically the next frontier for all things reporting. That's the new nomenclature around it. So to kick things off with analytics, we don't really have so much as an improvement, more so like a notification to let y'all know about. Due to new legal and privacy requirements, starting with Washington, D.C., users cannot have the ability to opt out of tracking and therefore will not be tracked. Their consent policy will be disabled. As a result, the numbers that analytics viewers will see in their user experience analytics dashboard for Washington will be different. So if you upgrade your version and over the coming weeks you see slight differences, that is because of this brand new feature. Obviously, this is to make sure everything is legally compliant, but just know that change has been occurred. Now, I mentioned on the title slide that we've shifted and renamed things in the entire analytics department. That's also reflected in how things are accessed. So like I mentioned in Flow Designer, we build all this stuff and then we put it in its proper home. That is what we're doing with performance and, now platform analytics. Platform analytics was originally a workspace, but now it's under the all menu for easier navigation to the dashboards, data visualizations, KPIs, and more. We're just trying to make it easily accessible in the way that you access all of your apps as well. And to make platform analytics look and behave more like traditional dashboards and homepages, we have added the ability for you to color the background of your dashboard or the various individual tabs as well. You can also set the refresh rate on the dashboard and display the time that it was refreshed to the user. So again, kind of consolidating what everyone likes about everything into one basket. Now, if you are an existing customer, it's likely that you have got some really good old reports, some standard reports, dashboards, perhaps some interactive filters, and performance analytics widgets that have really gotten the job done up to this point. Rather than having to rebuild everything in platform analytics, we offer a migration utility. So you can basically choose, hey, migrate everything, or you can pick and choose depending on the ones that you already have vetted as something appropriate of the migration. Know that exists, so you do not have to rebuild everything in platform analytics. Now, it's always good to give your end users options while still being able to guide them. In the Washington release, you will be able to implement cascading filters for your users so they can view the data that is most relevant to them without having to reduplicate analytics for each group, cost center, geolocation, what have you. While not overwhelming them with all these options, it kind of just makes everything more organized. I know that I've been on ServiceNow instances where the options seem endless because of how much my roles allow me. So this helps keep things cleaned up for every individual person. Speaking of viewing the data, platform analytics users in Washington, D.C. will be able to apply more than 2 levels of breakdowns or filters to their indicators in both KPI details and their dashboard. So this is just allowing everyone the ability to analyze their data more efficiently and gain more comprehensive insights from it. So just added layer of depth to these as well. And finally, we've made it for the analytics chapter of TechNow. We've made it to its finale that I teased in Flow Designer, Proactive Insights. Now, what this does is it identifies trends over the course of workflows and informs the relevant process owners to encourage exploration. So for example, think of it this way. This would be relevant for like a specific manager that's overseeing and responsible for tracking performance of all these various teams, right? It's really easy for people like that to overlook things just based off of the depth and width of everything that they have to see. So they might overlook a crucial insight about a sudden increase in one statistic or another that might delay things in the long term. What this does is it provides timely responses and possible interventions in the workflow process for a company. So it enhances the efficiency over time. Basically, it's another way the platform is working on your behalf without having to predict and monitor every single dashboard and every single report you have at all hours of the day. Developers can now use these to build experiences with essential workflow insights built directly in with flows. So from the beginning, you can already build the automation based off of the statistics and things that would create outliers in your business processes. It's really, really fantastic. I'm very excited about this because it not only brings apart a new, a dawning of a new age for reporting, but also for automation as well. So that's probably my biggest, most exciting feature. And with that, I will pass the ball back over to Pranav to talk about all things mobile.
Thanks, Lauren. And platform analytics is getting better and better every day. That's my perception. Let me know in the comments what you think about it. All right, back to mobile. First thing is, now we support zero trust access in mobile. When we talked about zero trust access in Vancouver release, we got questions from the chat and also in community when it will be available on mobile. We gave the feedback to our product team and finally it's here. And this also proves that we read all the comments and we really care a lot about your feedback. All right, moving on to offline mode. This is another thing that's enhanced in the Washington D.C. release. So I know we had offline mode for our agent app, but now it's available for all the apps on the platform. Also, additionally, you can create scheduled downloads, and best of all, there will be no change to user experience for our end users. Moving on, seismic pages. Seismic pages was released in the Vancouver release and with limited availability for some button types. In the Washington release, we support all types of button now in the seismic pages, as you can see on the screen: phone, email, all these things. Secondly, the mobile embedded web session will get extended using the mobile auth token. Moving on to critical updates. Mobile now supports the ability to create critical alerts. These alerts override the user's do not disturb policy. You'll first need to set the mobile system property to enable critical alerts, then define a push notification to be critical, and finally the user needs to accept critical alerts on the device, and you can set it to ask once or keep asking the user until user accepts it. I think we have seen that with other apps too. Moving on to pop-ups. This was highly requested feature from the developer community, when the pop-ups will be available on the mobile, when we will be able to add all these things. Finally, it's here. And pop-ups can be as simple as that, accepting the terms and condition, or maybe informing the user that the task they're working on can take more time than the time remaining in their shift. So you can easily create these pop-ups using the mobile app builder. Moving on about Now Assist capabilities. Somebody asked in the comments, we are not talking about Now Assist. See, it's here, it's everywhere. So now you will be able to use Now Assist to summarize all your task records. And this will be I think if anyone in the participant list who is a field engineer or something, if they're watching, it will save a hell lot of time for them, because I have seen a lot of big incidents or tasks that they're working on with a lot of data. And this thing can summarize their whole ticket in an instant. So this is a great improvement for the agents as per me. Moving on to data visualization. With Lauren just talked about platform analytics, we have created a unified end-to-end experience for our data visualization on mobile. This makes it easier than ever to create charts, reports for our mobile user in a single developer experience. Currently this is an opt-in feature for the Washington D.C. release, but it will be by default on starting Xanadu. Moving on to mobile SDK, this is my favorite feature. Like Chuck, I'm talking about Chuck. Earl talked about platform SDK, and similar to that, we have a mobile SDK. What it does is like you'll be able to add ServiceNow platform capabilities into your mobile, into your custom iOS and Android app. It's available as part of ServiceNow Store, so go ahead and check it out. And these are different types of mobile SDK components that are available so that you can utilize in your custom Android and iOS application. Moving on to AI search. So AI search was released as part of the Quebec release. People who are not aware about AI search enables organization to deliver natural search experience. And talking about natural search experience, now you will be able to use natural language query in your global search. As you can see in the example, I typed high priority incidents. All the top 5 high priority incidents came up, and below that you'll be able to see different types of other AI search results. So this is an exciting feature. Like I tried it, I loved it. I hope you also try it, and definitely I think you will love it. And moving on to AI search query, we have added a new query in our AI search that's called and or enhanced. So it's quite similar to and or, but only difference is like when you use and or enhanced, what happens is like you will get less noise. Let me show you an example. If you can see on the screen, on the left side, you can see we have an and or query, which brought more results and all. And when we use the same query like and or enhanced, you'll be seeing like we have a lot less results, and it will enhance the user search experience. And that's all I have from the AI search department. I'm going to pass it back to Lauren.
Well, I have some good news for everyone. We can't assume that Mr. Tomasi would not make some form of appearance for the 97th episode of TechNow. So it's my pleasure to kick off a little recorded message he has for everyone to introduce one more thing for the Washington version.
Hi, Chuck here. I've been on every episode of TechNow leading up to this point. You didn't think I'd miss out on this one, did you? And this time, I have the honor of presenting the best for last, because in Washington, D.C., we're debuting the brand new Creator Studio. This flashy new development environment will level the playing field for developers of all skill levels. It has all the features you've come to love from its predecessor, like integrated environment, app templates, and app management. Creator Studio takes it to the next level with better ways to do things like consistent developer experiences across the whole tool set. Now, just so you're aware, Creator Studio is debuting in Washington, D.C. in Store Release 2. I can't wait to show this off at Knowledge 24. See you there.
Awesome stuff. So give some love. He's probably watching this from the beaches of Hawaii, so give some love in the chat for Mr. Chuck Tomasi and the very, very exciting Creator Studio. So that's all that we have for you today regarding Washington, D.C. So humongous thank you to Earl, Pranav, and the entire team behind the scenes that's helping us with this webinar. The call to action from here on out is pretty simple. First, upgrade your PDI, personal developer instance, is that what that's referring to? As Earl mentioned, they will go live sometime today, at least historically they have, so I don't want to be too hard committing. It's not our team that does it, but you can anticipate those going live at least today, if not at latest, probably tomorrow. The second one is to check out the docs. There is a lot of phenomenal written information that goes much deeper into the Washington, D.C. feature, so please sure to check that out. And third, and finally, explore Washington, D.C. You can do it on your own time. You can do it on your own instance, or heck, you can do it alongside us. You can check out our entire content calendar, which is at devlink.sn/Washington, D.C. And you can plan out all the upcoming weeks of fun that we have going for you. And then we have a couple minutes left, so we actually have some time for some final Q&A. I assume there might be some about Creator Studio, so we'll be sure to check out the list.
Yeah, we'll cycle around to it if you see some good Creator Studio questions. One of the questions that came up a few times, hey, how do I watch this after if I want to watch it again or if I want to show my teammates? If you have registered for TechNow, it will be available on demand after today so that you'll be able to see it within this platform. If you want to see it on YouTube, if you want to share it more broadly to other people that might want to watch it, we plan on putting an edited version of this webinar on our YouTube channel. So youtube.com/@ServiceNowDevProgram is where you'll be able to find it. Usually after a week or two is when we'll post it on there. Okay, so other questions.
I have one. I have a very good question about should we upgrade our PDI now or should we wait until the PDI migration? So if you currently have a PDI, you might have gotten an email indicating that we are migrating basically where they are being run from. So we are encouraging people to basically back things up and create a new one. If you create a new instance PDI today, now correct me if I'm wrong, Earl, that counts, it will be part of the new location, correct?
That is what we are assuming. If we have posts online on the community forums, if you want to take a look at it to verify how the migration is happening and if your instance is part of that. So make sure to check that out. But generally speaking, you should be fine if you get your PDI, if you get a new PDI today.
I have one question, like a couple of people are asking about NLU, like how natural language query. So it's available. They're asking like whether it's supported in custom app or everything. It's supported there, like it's available now using the global search. When you have a global search, you type something, you can type in natural query, and then you will get the results out of it. So based on the configuration, if you have done in the backend, like which tables like you want to search and everything, you will be able to use NLEQ. So that's there.
And with that, we are unfortunately with 1 minute of time. I have to do a quick plug for Knowledge 24. As you know, we do one big conference a year that is May 7th through 9th in Las Vegas. There is not only a tremendous amount of networking opportunity and fun, but even more importantly, a tremendous learning opportunity to get all of the latest and greatest in the form of breakout sessions, labs, interactive things on the CreatorCon floor, which I will heavily promote because that's what our team represents. And you can see us all there if anything. So there is an opportunity to get early bird registration. That ends on February 29th. You get one extra day because it's a leap year. So I highly encourage you to scan that QR code, get that discount, and check us all out in Las Vegas. And with that being said, that brings us to the end of today's content. There are other amazing on-demand webinars I encourage you to check out. With that, thank you so much for joining in here today and have an amazing time enjoying the Washington, D.C. release. See y'all later.
Thank you.